One thing I am really happy about is I found a solution for reusing the scroll panel logic across all three of these components. So this code panel on the left here, this timeline panel, I can scroll up and down, left and right, and also the variable panel as well. Where is it there? The variable. All three of them are using the same scroll view component to render the scroll bars and handle the scrolling logic. And last week that was not the case. Last week I didn't have the timeline window yet. And then for the code panel I sort of duplicated the scrolling logic in the code panel. But I came up with a way to just share all of that logic very cleanly.
So do you like extract that to like a component or something, like an individual module?
It turns out that I didn't have to extract it. It turns out that the existing scroll view component, without any change, could already handle it. It's just that I didn't think of it.
Gotcha.
But I won't go into too much detail. We can probably talk about it later when we're talking about the details of the UI framework, maybe. But what I would say about that is it was a Eureka moment that came when I realized it. And and I'm very happy about it. Like,
Nice.
and this has happened to me in the last month twice, where it was like an idea that came to me that made something that I thought was difficult very easy.
What did you call the moment? Like, what's the
Eureka moment? I'm misspelling that. Eureka moment. A moment of sudden triumphant discovery, inspiration, or insight. Like, have you ever watched the show House? It might be a little old for you. Yeah, like House is a doctor, and then he's diagnosing these patients with very weird symptoms, and no other doctor can solve the case. And usually around the end of the episode, he'll have this Eureka moment where another person will be talking to him, but he completely zones out. Like, he's ignoring that person, and he's like, that's what it is.
10,000 oncologists in this country. Every one of them loses patients, but only you would feel guilty enough.
Of course. We can't even argue on my schedule.
and then he solves the case. Solving this, like having a clean way of sharing this scrolling logic between three different views, was kind of a Eureka moment. And I had another Eureka moment earlier when I had to solve the flickering problem. Every time I scrolled, the whole screen would flicker, because what I was doing was erasing the whole screen and then painting it again. I thought of several options of how to solve it, and I thought each one was going to be difficult. I thought it was going to be a difficult problem to solve, but I had a Eureka moment, and I came up with a double buffer based solution, which just means have everything paint to a buffer for the next frame, for the next image, and then pin the buffer over the terminal. And that solution ended up being not a lot of code at all. And also I swapped it in, and it worked very quickly. Like, I didn't have to make a lot of changes to the framework to swap it in, basically.
So how did you come up with the buffer idea?
Well, I mean, the origination of the idea is not new. I just stole it from what the other frameworks do, or what the game engines do, because that's what they usually do. It's not the idea itself that was, or even that it was original or anything. The idea was in the back of my head. There are other ideas that were also in the back of my head. I guess the thing I really want to say about this is when I was younger, I was more headstrong. I would tend to try to power through problems. When I say power through, I probably mean work a lot more hours to solve the problem. And I probably will end up solving it just because I put in a lot of hours. But sometimes the solution wasn't quite so elegant. And I feel like now that I'm older, I'm better at going with the flow and allowing the eureka moments to happen. And by that I mean, when there's a difficult problem that I have either attempted to solve it and then failed, or other things about it that occur to me to make the problem difficult. Instead of trying really hard to power through the problem, now I usually take a step back. Okay, I've thought about it enough today. I'm going to take a break from this problem. And then often I would think about it on my break, or not on that break, perhaps, but on later on during the day. When I'm more relaxed, the back of my mind is thinking about the problem, and then maybe over several days, or maybe even a month, or however long it takes, eventually the eureka moment happens, and I come up with a solution that I'm really happy about.
So like when you like compare like different potential solution, because you don't know which one will work, so do you just like try them out to a certain extent and it's like, oh, this is not gonna work, so next one? Or do you like just think through them before like trying them out? Because as you said, sometimes it takes a long time to just try them out and make them work.
Yeah, well, both. When I try something out and I fail, then I try to really understand what the problem is exactly. And that's what I attribute to debugging, like trying to really debug and figure out the root cause of problems. Once you do that debugging and learning about the problem, then you have a better appreciation for what the problem really is. And then that goes into your pondering, your day-to-day pondering of the problem, which sometimes happens subconsciously. And you hear about this kind of work for different creative work, like artists, musicians, composers, etc. Like it's like your subconscious is working on the problem, and you're not trying to force it, and because your subconscious are like trying to put together very different things which you normally wouldn't put together. Sometimes the subconscious comes up with a solution you wouldn't normally think of, and then it actually turns out to be a good solution.
It happens to me when I play piano. It's like if I keep practicing this hard part, it's just gonna get worse. But if I sit like just don't play and sit for a while, like a day, like the next day, I will actually play better, just because how maybe my subconscious like work through these stuff like when I'm not practicing. I don't know.
or just looked at it differently. Because it's like it's an optimization problem, and when you get stuck, what's happening is you can look at it as a decision tree where you have a lot of choices to make. You have a decision to make, like between using this finger or using that finger. I don't know. So A or B. But then once you make that decision, there's another decision to make. Like, do you lift your elbow up or do you put your elbow down? That's between C and D. And then there's even more decisions. Each one of these, you pick a choice, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so you're down very deep in a tree of decisions. And then for that particular day, you made those set of decisions to get you at like a very deep level in a tree.
Yeah.
When you sleep on it, the next day you come back. When you relax,
Mm-hmm.
you let go of some of these decisions.
Yeah.
So the next day you might be free. You might end up on a different path within this tree, and that might just end up working just because of luck. It's not necessarily because you are smarter today, but more because you're lucky.
That's true. Yeah.
And that's the optimization problem. Sometimes, yeah, you can based on where you are, you can tell how to improve just based on the local place that you are within the tree. But other times, the more optimal problem is far away in a completely separate place in the tree, and you will never get there if you use a local based strategy.
Global versus local.
That's my theorizing about it. I don't know if I'm right or wrong about that.